Blog Talk Radio. Hi there and welcome. This is Book of Mormon Reader, and we are reading our last chapter of the actual Book of Mormon, Mormon 1 today, and then we'll move into 4th Nephi tomorrow as we move our way backwards through the Book of Mormon. I figured it's just as good a way as any to pick it up and have a system as long as you stay consistent with it. So that's what I'm doing. Interesting that Mormon himself as a person said that he got his name from the land of Mormon where many baptisms were taken. And so I think that's significant that that is associated with covenants with the Lord. And so it's interesting that if you are a Mormon today like me, or you're not, then you've heard of Mormons, I hope, that even though we don't call ourselves that sort of a nickname, that we are a covenant people. So that's pretty significant that that's what his name is. So with no further ado, let's get going, shall we? The Book of Mormon, Mormon, Chapter 1. And now I, Mormon, make a record of the things which I have both seen and heard, and call it the Book of Mormon. And about the time that Ammoron hid up the records unto the Lord, he came unto me, I being about 10 years of age, and I began to be learned somewhat after the manner of the learning of my people. And Ammoron said unto me, I perceive that thou art a sober child, and art quick to observe. Therefore, when ye are about 24 years old, I would that ye should remember the things that ye have observed concerning this people. And when ye are of that age, go to the land Antum, unto a hill which shall be called Shem, and there have I deposited unto the Lord all the sacred engravings concerning this people. And behold, ye shall take the plates of Nephi unto yourself, and the remainder shall ye leave in the place where they are, and ye shall engrave on the plates of Nephi all the things that ye have observed concerning this people. And I, Mormon, being a descendant of Nephi, and my father's name was Mormon, I remembered the things which Ammoron commanded me. And it came to pass that I, being 11 years old, was carried by my father into the land southward, even to the land of Zarahemla. The whole face of the land had become covered with buildings, and the people were as numerous almost as it were the sands of the sea. And it came to pass in this year there began to be a war between the Nephites, who consisted of the Nephites, and the Jacobites, and the Josephites, and the Zoramites. And this war was between the Nephites, and the Lamanites, and the Lemuelites, and the Ishmaelites. Now the Lamanites and the Lemuelites and the Ishmaelites were called Lamanites, and the two parties were Nephites and Lamanites. And it came to pass that the war began to be among them in the borders of Zarahemla, by the waters of Sidon. And it came to pass that the Nephites had gathered together a great number of men, even to exceed the number of 30,000. And it came to pass that they did have in this same year a number of battles, in which the Nephites did beat the Lamanites, and did slay many of them. And it came to pass that the Lamanites withdrew their design, and there was peace settled in the land. And peace did remain for the space of about 4 years, that there was no bloodshed. But wickedness did prevail upon the face of the whole land, insomuch that the Lord did take away his beloved disciples, and the work of miracles and of healing did cease, because of the iniquity of the people. And there were no gifts from the Lord, and the Holy Ghost did not come upon any, because of their wickedness and unbelief. And I, being 15 years of age, and being somewhat of a sober mind, therefore I was visited of the Lord, and tasted and knew of the goodness of Jesus. And I did endeavor to preach unto this people, but my mouth was shut, and I was forbidden that I should preach unto them. For behold, they had wilfully rebelled against their God, and the beloved disciples were taken away out of the land because of their iniquity. But I did remain among them, but I was forbidden to preach unto them because of the hardness of their hearts. And because of the hardness of their hearts the land was cursed for their sake. And these Gadianton robbers, who were among the Lamanites, did infest the land, insomuch that the inhabitants thereof began to hide up their treasures in the earth, and they became slippery, because the Lord had cursed the land, that they could not hold them, nor retain them again. And it came to pass that there were sorceries, and witchcrafts, and magics, and the power of the evil one was wrought upon all the face of the land, even unto the fulfilling of all the words of Abinadi, and also Samuel the Lamanite. Well, I'm sort of feeling a little reflective that we're going to leave the words of Mormon, an amazing person and an incredible prophet, and wondered, as I'm reading this, when Joseph Smith was translating this record, and he saw that Mormon had almost identical experience that he had had, if it, number one, if it confirmed to him the pattern of the Lord, or if he felt a relief that somebody else knew what he had gone through before him, in so much that where he's talking about he was very young when the Lord came to see him, which also happened to Joseph Smith, that he was forbidden to take what he was told to take, but given a certain time in the future, after he had matured a little bit, that he remembered and he knew exactly where to go. Same thing is happening. I mean, you could just substitute these names and it would be the same story. He deposited all the sacred records under a hill. Same thing happened. So pretty interesting. I just wonder, there's a question that you could only ask Joseph Smith, who could answer that question. But I imagine it must have been somewhat of a comfort and a relief to know that he was not the only one who had had this experience at such a young age. Imagine living your life and being a young boy. That's a young boy. I mean, 10 is even younger than Joseph Smith was at 14. And to now, with the, what's the quality he says here, that he's sober and he's quick to observe. He probably had a certain demeanor about him that made him a thoughtful child. And of course, because we know that the Lord knows who we are before we're born. But he must have had an effect on other people. There's a young man in my ward right now who is a young man. He's probably, he's 12 or 13. He passes the sacrament. But he gets up from time to time and he bears his testimony with a quality and a humility and a strength that you wouldn't think could be possible in a young child. But there it is. I mean, so I can kind of see, what this is like, that here was this young kid who seemed to possess a certain wisdom, that to the degree that they later make him an army of this amazing number of people at 16. So I think that there's a great message in there that you're never too young to have the Lord lean upon you and use you as a vessel to further his work. That's something that's a powerful principle. I think we need to trust our children more, that they're capable of handling a lot. And a lot is being handed to them. I mean, you think about just in the last, decades, the last several decades, all the stuff that's happened to make all knowledge available at the click of a mouse, that when I was younger, it was not that easy. You had to mine for knowledge. You had to go to a library. You had to open an encyclopedia. You had to go to the articles section and read magazines and do all of those things. You had to really, really hunt for it. And so now, with it, just click, 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 you say, oh, let me ask this question on Google. I'll just look it up, and boom, within seconds, you have your answer. And how does that change? How does that change? I mean, for good and maybe for not so good. I think sometimes the for good part means that they don't have to rely as far as a cost involved to get information. But because it seems to be omnipresent, all out there at the click of a mouse, and we see the things that people are looking up, and you're like, just because you could probably doesn't mean you should. There's some things that probably would be best not to know. But that being said, on the flip side, knowing that there are also, that the computer, that technology is a tool, and that it can be used for righteous purposes and it can be used for unrighteous purposes. And both of the powers that be, that are opposing, that exist in the world, are going at it. I mean, this is the final days. This is an actual battle. It's a war. And to have this little army of the Lord being sent forth, they need to know and to be everything that they need to be, so that they will not have what happened to these people happen to them. And I think that's the pleadings of Mormon that I have seen, that he not only was a prophet, but he was a participant in these horrible things that happened. He wasn't an observer. He actually took part. And that's another thing that's similar with the youth of today. Like when I was a kid, I'd watch Donnie and Marie. That was my favorite show on Friday nights. I was probably, 6 or 7 years old, and I just loved it. And if you missed it, you missed it. There's no going back and rewinding. What did they say? There was no, you had to be home at Friday night if you wanted to watch it. Today, kids, if they're not home, they can watch it anytime they want. They pull it up from YouTube, or they search the internet, or they do whatever, and they never have to commit. They just do it on their own free time. And interesting, this morning as I was going through my Twitter account, some of the things on the homepage talked about there's an unprecedented number of new missionaries going forth. And this last conference, with the age requirement being lowered for both young men and young women, from young men from 19 to 18, and from young women from 21 to 19, it's an indication that the Lord is hastening his work, that his army is needed more than ever. And there was a good movie out by Richard Dutcher, I think is the producer, who has since, I believe, left the church, but he produced a movie called God's Army, and it was about missionaries. And was it ahead of its time? I don't know, but it talked about that and called those missionaries God's Army. Well, you think about an army and what you need to be a part of that, and it is a war. And that was the other thing I was going to say about Twitter and Facebook and things of that nature, where for Mormon, he wasn't just an observer and a prophet looking back on things. He was a participant. He was part of that war. And in Twitter and in Facebook, you're not just observing things, you're participating, you're commenting, you're sending in questions. I wondered when it was said that there would be interactive TV. Oh my gosh, how are they going to do that? What's it going to look like? And I saw a little clip from, was it the X Factor or something, where you're voting on, or maybe it was New Year's Eve. That's what it was, because I don't have regular TV, and I was at my parents' house, and they said vote for who you think is the most handsome person here in the streets of New York City. This big handsome soldier or this other person, I thought, you know, now here's a tool I don't think was intended for this purpose, to have people participate to vote who they think is the hunkiest. So sometimes tools get in the hands of people that just really don't use it to its fullest, most righteous potential. But then again, that's going to happen all the time because, again, there are opposing forces in the world. Also, this morning, I saw a little part of a radio show, which actually is, when I say I saw it, it's because I subscribed to the Glenn Beck TV thing, and they had an incredible piece of technology that was mentioned yesterday. I just didn't happen to see it because I was just listening, but it's a 3D printer where it will replicate anything. And I thought, 3D printer? I had seen a few months ago a 3D printer that would build a house. And it was like a modular house. And if you haven't seen this thing, it's unbelievable. And it would revolutionize the way that people have shelter if they do it. I can't remember if it was in this country or Sweden or something like that, but they were actually building these homes out of this 3D printer that was enormous. It was a size of a block about, and they could put out a house in like 72 hours. This printer would do it. It didn't print ink, it cut through material, walls, and I mean, it just replicated it. Imagine, we're at the precipice of just incredible breakthroughs of technology. This thing they had on the show today, they had this little tiny shark. I didn't see what the original thing was because I was, getting ready, but I did see when they took it out of it, it looked like a microwave almost. So when they took it out, I guess they said it was made out of fishing line, and then when the shape is done, it sort of melts it all together almost like resin, and then you can take that thing and use it if that's what you want, or take it to a cast person and make something out of resin or metal, or the possibilities really are endless. And so I think it's reflective on society, how we use the tools of the day, with what kind of people they are, and also how what kind of inspiration people get to produce such things. So anyways, we're living in it's just a wondrous time of technology to see all these things that will unfold. And we're just on the edge of those kinds of things. It's just incredible. So Mormon, I thought it was interesting too. I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but when he describes the scene, I'm sure he didn't want to describe it, especially having known, I think, consider the time that this was more of a summation after all the horrible things had happened, when he had time, or did he write this before all the wars had happened and then picked it up from time to time and added a little bit to it? That I don't know. But obviously he didn't write this as a first-hand account right when he was 10 years old. He wrote it afterwards because he talked about, he was 14 years had gone by. And we know from his account of at the end, he ended up being 73. So how old was he when he actually wrote this? How old was he? And interesting, I thought about this because this weekend, as I had mentioned, I think it was yesterday, my niece was baptized. And the primary person who was there to represent the presidency gave her a little baptism book for her to record her memories of the day and to have people sign in as a guest book. And it was just so precious because she went home that very day and was recording her feelings of that day. Can you imagine what a treasure that would be to look upon in years to come, how you felt on your baptism day? And anyway, there's something different about when you're recording something when it happens versus when you record something from years to come on reflection. So I think what we're getting here is an account from Mormon as he looks back on reflection, and I think he's really not cherry picking, but really trying to give us the most desperate pleadings of his heart. that we might not replicate the mistakes that his people made. And if ever you hear that, you can hear it in Mormon's voice. He absolutely was, I mean, with all the things that he had, that, he was really, really pleading as a prophet, as a fellow traveler, human being, as a prophet, as a warrior who watched the total demise of his people. Please don't do what my people did. And yet he says, looking ahead, that this message is for the Gentiles and for the Jews. Interesting. Now let me see. Interesting too that he lists all the different names of the different tribes of people: Nephites, Jacobites, Josephites, Zoramites, and then basically they all fit under this umbrella of Nephites and Lamanites. So there was a system of how they organized people also. And we can see what that would be like if we, there's certain counties that have certain rivalries where you live. It's the same for me here in California. You can see how, okay, overall we're Californians, and then overall we're, Americans. And so anyway, so that's not so hard to picture that. But let me look at this here. Oh, in verse 13, he talks about miracles stopping and healing stopping, and the voice of the Lord stopping, and him having his voice stopped because of the wickedness of people. And I don't know if I can imagine, I just don't know if I can imagine living a life without the assistance and the lift, the buoy of the Spirit. And I just think, wow, that must have just been a horrible scene for him to witness, knowing what he had known, because he had been personally visited by the Lord, and watching his people willfully rebel. The whole thing of there is your heart, the willful rebellion. And I have seen this firsthand myself, when people, they know what's right, they know what's true, and you think, well, guy, why wouldn't they choose to, do the right thing? Nope, they're not interested. They run to the opposite end of doing the right thing. What is that all about? Why is there such a willful rebellion? But the Lord makes it clear. Hey, don't give them, don't pray for them. The Lord knows your heart. Eventually, everything that you do will be, as they said in another chapter, shouted from the rooftop. And here's another interesting part. The prophets say these things. When I was looking in this little guide that I look through from time to time, there's a little quote from previous chapters that we haven't gotten to yet because we're working backwards. But this was a fulfillment of the prophecies from Samuel the Lamanite, and from what Abinadi said. And listen to this and see how it's come true here. I don't know how many, if it was hundreds of years before, I'm not sure. But he talks about, not only were the Gadiantans cursing the land with their secret murder cult, but there were numerous manifestations of Satan's dark mentality. There was magic, there was, how did they list it here? There was a lot of different things that they did. Sorceries, witchcrafts, magics, and the power of the evil one was wrought upon all the face of the land. Okay, so that's how they end in this, but listen to this one. And see if this isn't a little bit eerie. But in a way, that's sort of what prophecies are, is they foretell the future as though it's history in advance. Okay. This is in 3rd Nephi, chapter 26, verses 7 through 10. I think it's what it says. And behold, the time cometh that he curseth your riches, that they become slippery, that ye cannot hold them. And in the days of your poverty ye cannot retain them. And in the days of your poverty ye shall cry unto the Lord, and in vain shall ye cry, for your destruction is made sure. And then shall ye weep and howl in that day, saith the Lord of hosts. And then shall ye lament and say, Oh, that I had repented, and had not killed the prophets, and stoned them, and cast them out. Yea, in that day ye shall say, Oh, that we had remembered the Lord our God in the day that he gave us our riches, and then they would not have become slippery, that we should lose them. For behold, our riches are gone from us. Behold, we lay a tool here, and on the morrow it is gone. And behold, our swords are taken from us in the day we have sought them for battle. Yea, we have hid up our treasures, and they have slipped away from us, because of the curse of the land. Oh, that we had repented in the day that the word of the Lord came unto us. For behold, the land is cursed, and all things are become slippery, and we cannot hold them. Behold, we are surrounded by demons. Yea, we are encircled by angels of him who hath sought to destroy our souls. Behold, our iniquities are great. O Lord, canst thou not turn away thine anger from us? And this shall be your language in those days. Is that not an incredible prophecy that we see actually what happened? Interesting, this word slippery. I wonder if that's how that works in translation, the word slippery, that you can't hold on to them, so they slip out of your hands. It's an interesting thing. But because of knowing the time that we live, how we had this surge of prosperity and of wealth and of extreme comfort and money and abundance. And now people have been cursed with the curse of poverty. Now that it's nearly 50%, if it's not, that are on government assistance of some sort. That's incredible. Those are incredible numbers. Back in the day, it was like 3%. If your taxes went up to 3%, people revolted. And now taxes are almost at 30%, and some places more. And they're trying to tax the people who have the most money even more. So this is, we're living in a day that's replicating what they saw in their day. I also wonder at the beginning when he says that it was covered with buildings. Wonder what those buildings look like. What did they build them out of? I went into an art store and saw all these materials to make little models of things. And I had gone to Cal Poly, Pomona, when I was a student. And I was used to pass through the architect building. I parked up there so that I could walk through that building and see all the different projects. What kind of things did they build? That's just something else I had thought of. I want to end today with just those, with an homage to Mormon, who was an incredible person of faith and of character and of bravery and of obedience. I'm thankful that he had the I don't even know if it's the spine. I don't think it's the spine. I think it's the knowledge and the applied faith that he had to withstand all of the suffering that he endured to bring us what we have today as a treasure. There was unearthed a document that was supposed to be, a couple thousand years old. Can you imagine getting the writings that he didn't include? What that would do today to unearth those things? What a blessing. Well, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you tomorrow as we start a new book, 4th Nephi. Bye.